For the past 35 years, Rabbi Avram Aryeh Trugman has worked in the field of Jewish education. Based on his teachings, he has written numerous books, the latest being Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Perhaps the most famous of all Jewish sayings, the Shema is a cry from the heart, a meditation of the mind, and a deliberate declaration of identity. Over the next few weeks, Rabbi Trugman will explain the rich array of philosophical and spiritual wisdom encoded within the words of the Shema.
Maybe one of the most important verses in the entire Torah, the Bible, is Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Many people who know very, very little of the Bible have at least heard this idea. And of course, this goes back to our father, Abraham, where his mission in the world was to teach the world that there was one God. 4,000 years later, that is still the mission of the Jewish people. Not only to believe in one God, and not only to teach that there's one God, but to integrate it deeply in our own lives, that it's not just a philosophy, it's a living reality. That not just that God is one, but ultimately everything is one. The Shema is recited twice a day, in the morning and the evening. According to the rabbis, added 2 more Shemas. So we actually, observant Orthodox Jews actually say Shema 4 times a day. But what I found from my own experience is that when we recite the Shema in our prayers, to keep up with the congregation, we have around 7 seconds to actually say the Shema. And then there are 3, we'll call them paragraphs or passages that we say along with it, which take another few minutes. And many, many people get overwhelmed and actually don't know what to be thinking about when they say the Shema. So I've just written a book called Shema Yisrael, 200 Meditations on Judaism's Cardinal Principle of Faith. And in it I have 200 short ideas to be thinking about when saying the Shema. The verse of Shema ends with Hashem Echad, God is one. We learned that there was a paradox involved here with duality, 2 different names of God, but the Shema is asserting that ultimately not only is God one, but all of existence, all of reality is connected and is one. But we have another paradox here, and this we can only see through Jewish numerology. Hashem, the 4 letters of this name of God, equals 26, and the word Echad equals 13. 13 is exactly 1/2 of 26. What does it mean that the name of God is double the word Echad? So this is a concept explained by a great Kabbalist around 800 years ago. His name was Rabbi Abraham Abulafia, and he called it Shalem V'Chetzi, a whole and a half. And he showed through extensive analysis that many, many phrases, important phrases in the Torah have the same equation of a whole and a half. But what does that mean to us on a personal level? So this is connected to one of the mitzvahs in the Torah, that we're told that we don't do a census by counting people. How did they do it? Everyone brought half a shekel. Shekel was a denomination of a coin. And then they would count the coins, and then they would know how many people there are. But everyone asks, why a half a shekel? Why not a whole shekel? And so the teaching given over is that in relationship to God, we are all a half. God is the whole of which we are a part of. We're a half. Yet, every person is an individual to themselves, meaning every person is both a whole and a half. So there's a very, very deep teaching here about the relationship of being whole and a part. But what makes a person feel not just like a half is being part of something greater. And we can even relate to this to all of humanity, because all of humanity comes from Adam. And ultimately, when the Mashiach comes, the Messiah comes, all of our prophets said humanity will come together again, and all the divisions and all the hatred and all of the wars will cease. And so every person can relate to this teaching of a whole and a half.
The Shema represents much more than the cardinal statement of Jewish faith in one God. The prayer also encapsulates Judaism's mission in the world, from the time of Abraham until this very day. Rabbi Avram Trugman continues with his series on the Shema, explaining how to take the time to contemplate the depth of philosophical and spiritual wisdom encoded within the words of the Shema.
One of the most important lessons in life is when things aren't going our way, not to throw up our hands and give up and think, where is God? God is not here, God doesn't hear, God doesn't care. When we say that God is one, it means whatever we're going through, whatever the world is going through. Again, I would be the first one to admit that many times we simply do not understand God's ways. We don't understand how God's oneness is manifest in a world of duality, of good and evil, and all that that entails. But the idea of nothing being as whole as a broken heart, one of the meanings of the four-letter name of God that is mentioned in the Shema is that this is God's quality of compassion, of mercy, and of love. And we're told that God created the world because he wanted to give. He wanted a relationship. He wanted to love, and he wanted to be loved. Of course, this is a very wide philosophical discussion that we cannot delve into right now. But this idea that one of the essential qualities of God is compassion and love and caring, we'll call it for better or for worse, we usually don't learn those lessons until our hearts have been broken. Not just in love through sickness or tragedy or concern with the state of the world. When we feel deeply the pain of the world, of another person, our own pain, and on a deep level, God's pain at what mankind has done with the free will that he gave us. See, God, most of the time, has to play by the rules that he makes. And once he gave mankind free choice, it has to be for real. So he has to allow mankind to rise or fall on its choices. Sometimes God does intervene when we're about to go over the cliff as individuals or a community or a nation or the world. But again, for better or for worse, we learn such important lessons through feeling other people's pain. So that's what it means. There's nothing as whole as a broken heart. In a sense, I'd like to give a bracha that we never have to experience getting there with a broken heart, but it seems that that's how God has made his world. And so we shouldn't be afraid of feeling other people's pain. A lot of people want to close themselves, because not because they don't want to feel other people's pain, but they're afraid of the emotions that feeling other people's pains will bring up in themselves. And people are afraid of unpleasant feelings, but we shouldn't be. When something tragic happens, we should feel that pain, not to be incapacitated by it, not to give up faith because of it, not shutting down because of it, emotionally or spiritually. But to feel pain actually leads us to a great wholeness. It is a long-standing tradition in Judaism that if a person is aware that they're about to pass away, that they recite the Shema. There are many, many stories told of literally millions of people in the Holocaust that went to their deaths saying the Shema. So it's not a theoretic idea. It applies to the individual, but we saw it in mass during the Holocaust. But also connected to this, very interesting, is when we go to sleep at night, we also say the Shema, because who knows if they're going to wake up? We assume so, but we don't know so. So we say the Shema before we go to sleep, because maybe our souls will leave us. And that is what helps us transition from this world to the world to come, from being awake to sleep. And it shows our total faith that in this world, the next world, God is one.
Rabbi Trugman's book, Shema Yisrael, presents an impressive guide to the Shema, a prayer that is used both in the morning and evening prayer services. The book contains commentary and insights that serve as tools to be used when reciting the Shema with understanding, intention, and emotional inspiration. Today, Rabbi Trugman concludes his series on the Shema.
When analyzing the word echad, one, there are many beautiful teachings that jump out at us. So let's look at just two ideas, but both entail looking at the individual letters of the word echad. The word echad is made up of 3 letters, an aleph, which equals 1 numerically, a chet, which equals 8, and a daled, which equals 4. So one of the basic intentions of saying the Shema is to visualize, to imagine that God, who is one, the aleph, we need to draw down that oneness through the 7 heavens to the earth. 7 and 1 equals 8, the second letter of the word echad. And then to spread it to the 4 directions. So this is a very potent visualization of just going through the 3 letters of echad. God, who is one, but we don't want God's oneness just way up there in heaven someplace. We need to draw it down through what are called the 7 heavens, 7 spiritual levels, until it gets to the earth. We want to manifest that oneness. Again, that is the mission of the Jewish people. And once it gets to the earth, it needs to spread to the 4 directions of the world until the whole world is one. That is one idea. A second idea follows the same structure, taking the 3 letters of echad, but we'll do it in a different way. Everyone knows the phrase that the land of Israel is called a land flowing with milk and honey. So if you take that phrase in Hebrew and you take out the word flowing, in other words, a land that has milk and honey, So it's Eretz, Chalav, Devash, which are the first letters of the three letters of the word Echad. That Echad is centrally focused in the land of Israel. It will be from the land of Israel that this sweetness will be spread to the four corners of the earth, because when we say Shema, we're taught that when we say the Lord our God, one of the things to think about is right now, God is our God. But in the future, God will be one. All of the prophets taught that a time will come that all humanity will come together in peace and in harmony and will all be one. Sometimes we call it the global village, but here it's not only the physical global village, but a spiritual global village. According to our tradition, that will emanate from the Holy Land, a land flowing in milk and honey, and that oneness, Eretz Chalav Devash, a land of milk and honey, will flow to the whole world, and everyone will recognize and appreciate and praise the one God.